Survivor, we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to Surviving the Survivor, the show that brings you the very best guests in all of true crime on trending criminal cases. There is no bigger trial happening in all the world right now than the Sean Diddy Combs trial. And we're not bringing you best guests. We're bringing you updates from a trial that is inside a federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan with no cell phones allowed. There is a small group of media that have access to electronics, and a bunch of people who I know from my previous life in media that I am sort of collating and putting together the day's testimony. Jurors are now on a lunch break. Court is adjourned after some heavy testimony this morning. It is, of course, day 7 of testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. You may recall that Judge Arun Subramanian had told jurors when they were being selected for jury duty that they could be here till July 4th weekend, 8 full weeks. However, I had a former federal prosecutor on who says that this is moving at a very fast clip, and she would be surprised if it goes past, 4 weeks total. So maybe another 2 weeks of testimony. If that, we'll see if that prediction comes to fruition. For the second day in a row, jurors were late. New York City is not an easy place. I live there. I was there last week for the trial. Just getting around from point A to point B is tough. There's an outage, been repeated outages at Newark Airport. That seems to have had a ripple effect on the entire city, not just flights, but people who are coming into the city are running late. There was a transit strike. The trains are late. So the jurors have had issues with getting to court on time now for the second day in a row. So testimony could not begin till they were all seated, and that did not happen till about 9:45 in the morning. It's important to point out Sean Diddy Combs, his attorney, Brian Steele, very well-known, renowned New York City attorney. He's back in court watching the proceedings, along with Cassie Ventura's attorney, a guy named Douglas Wigdor, also very well known in attorney circles in New York City. But at 9:45 this morning, a gentleman named David James, he resumes testimony from yesterday. He was a one-time assistant for Sean Combs from 2007 to 2009. And he became emotional yesterday, and then recalling again when he was told by HR, Human Resources, and what an HR department there must be at Bad Boys, because it was HR that told this person, and I quote now, "This is Mr. Combs' kingdom. We're all here to serve in it." So he is retelling some of the stories from inside Bad Boy Records. So around 10 a.m., David James now takes you through, once again, the medicine bag that we've heard so much about of Sean Diddy Combs. He says that at any time, given time, he would have somewhere between 25 to 30 pill bottles in this Louis Vuitton toiletry bag. And they included Percocet, ecstasy, Viagra, weight loss pills, even pills to increase sperm count. You see it right there. Water pills. Obviously, he was concerned about weight and keeping it off. And some of these pill bottles were unmarked. And you see that David James just looks like he has a sweet face, this guy. He was asked to buy baby oil. We know about the freak-offs now. Astroglide and condoms in cash. So it's off the books. So using cash. If you just step back and think about any company in America, whether it's General Electric or Microsoft or 3M or the mom and pop pizza shop or the local little convenience store or your, dry cleaners. Imagine if you're working there and they're telling you to go buy baby oil, Astroglide, and condoms in cash, and you're seeing the owner taking pills to increase sperm count on top of Viagra and the gazillion other medications that he was taking. David James This is why this is a wild trial. He informs jurors while giving testimony that if staying in New York City, Sean Combs preferred the Trump International Hotel, which is in Columbus Circle, which is about 59th Street in Manhattan, and that he was often asked to go get Fiji water. That was the water of choice, which I have to say is good water. Ciroc vodka, that is Sean Combs's vodka brand. Applesauce. We're going to have some psychologists on tonight. I'm going to ask them about the applesauce because I was feeding that to my infants and toddlers. Jell-O also. Sean Combs likes Jell-O. And other items, Sean Combs would send them out to Dwayne Reed. Dwayne Reed is like the CVS and Walgreens of New York City. Just after 10 a.m., David James is still on the stand, and then we find and learn something interesting more about these pills. And I quote here, David James tells jurors there were various pills, but one was in the form of a former president's face. Asked which one, he replies, President Obama. It was Barack Obama. These are the same pills that we heard about from a drug dealer who was brought up yesterday. His name is One Stop. They were asked, David James was asked, how often would he take these Obama-shaped ecstasy pills? I can't wait for Barack Obama to read about this today. He is going to be in slight disbelief. But he was asked how often would Sean Combs take these pills, these ecstasy pills shaped like President Obama, and he said he would take them, meaning Sean Combs, every day. Excuse me. He added that Diddy would also take Percocet during the day, which is an opiate, which they talked about opiate addiction for pain, and so he was just regularly taking that as well. 10:30 this morning, on the outside of the courthouse, Cassie Ventura's mother is swarmed by media. Regina Ventura, she arrives at court. She's with Cassie's father. Obviously it's clear that she's about to give testimony, which she does, which we will get to. And there was talk about, the previously threats that Sean Combs had made about releasing 2 sexually explicit videos, which we will get to in a moment. But back to David James, who's inside the federal courthouse shortly before 11 a.m. He says that at one point, Sean Combs forced lie detector tests on him over missing items, including a Jacob and Company watch, and another time because some cash was stolen. So Sean Combs, what does he do? I guess mob style or FBI style, sits David James down in front of a polygraph. And the quote is, "It was extremely intimidating. I met with a gentleman who told me he was a former FBI lie detector and that he was the most specialist lie detector in America." So whoever this unknown person is now telling David James that he is the foremost lie detector given in the nation, and now he's testing him inside of Bad Boy Records. Whether that is true or not, it is doubtful that it is true, but that's what this person was telling David James. David James acknowledges that he passes both tests, and then he explains that Sean Combs' assistant, who is fairly well known, Capricorn Clark, she was also forced to take a test over a missing briefcase of jewelry. So Sean Combs obviously living a life of ecstasy. Well, that was not intended, but that was a pun. Excess, I should say, with all these watches and the cash laying around. You get the idea. Right at about 11 a.m. And by the way, jurors are on a lunch break right now, but right at around 11 a.m., we hear testimony about Sean Combs packing 3 guns to confront Suge Knight. And we heard Suge Knight's name last week as well. And of course, he is the notorious West Coast rapper, music producer, who's currently in prison. David James describes this incident from mid-November 2008 and says that Sean Combs had not one, not two, but 3 handguns on his lap. He says it happened after a run-in with Suge Knight at Mel's Diner in Los Angeles, Mel's Drive-In, which, by the way, is an amazing diner. It's an old-school 1950s style type diner. There are a bunch of them in Los Angeles. You get amazing milkshakes. And so Suge Knight's in there probably having a milkshake when David James shows up, and he's there with D-Rock, who is one of Diddy's well-known security guards. And D-Rock at that point, per David James's testimony, turns to Suge and says, and I quote, "I'm Diddy's boy." Suge Knight responds, "What are you doing in my city?" They go back to where they're staying, and I guess it was Sean Combs' home at the time. They now get into an Escalade, according to David James, which, of course, is a Cadillac SUV. They are armed with those 3 guns, and they return to the diner, but Suge Knight was gone. David James breaks down on the stand a couple times because he's visibly upset, visibly scared. And he says, I was really, there you see the tissue. I was really shook up by it. It was the first time being Mr. Combs' assistant where I realized my life was in danger. It was the first time being Mr. Combs' assistant where I realized my life was in danger. And it sounds like it really was. He notes that he had to book a lot of hotel rooms, but he would always use the alias Frank Black, which we heard from Cassie Ventura last week. Sean Combs went by Frank Black. When asked if he ever witnessed Sean Combs physically abuse Cassie, he responds, no, never. But then he clarifies that Cassie had never confided in him about any physical abuse, but I guess that he did walk in and see some things, but she didn't confide in he. David James said he once walked in on Cassie lying on a bed in Sean Combs' hotel suite, and he describes her as looking kind of sad, and then points out that there's another unnamed woman who is just walking around the room naked, sort of aimlessly. Whether she was on drugs or not is unclear. Whether either of them were on drugs at that point is unclear. David James testifies that Sean Diddy Combs makes him sign an NDA. That's a non-disclosure agreement, often used by companies and powerful people to silence people. In California, someone pointed out that they are against the law, not the case in New York City. But he testifies that Sean Diddy Combs makes him, David James, sign NDAs, and also takes an extra step of making David James read the NDA out loud so there would be no misunderstanding. Literally had him read the NDA word for word, verbatim, out loud, so he had it on audio tape as well. Diddy once tells David James that he had a guy, quote unquote, in Miami. Anytime you hear someone says, I have a guy, that's a problem. But he tells David James he had a guy in Miami who's a cleaner, and that implies someone who could handle messes. And this is not a custodian. This is, you get the idea, the person who takes care of problems. David James, again, visibly worked up over that. He realized, I think, at this point that he was dealing with a bit of a criminal element. And remember, the racketeering charges and some of these others involve a criminal enterprise. And it sure sounds at this point like there's some criminality involved, but doesn't meet the legal threshold and the legal definition of the law. That is to be seen and decided by the jurors. David James says that Sean Combs instructs him not to look at anyone in the eye at certain meetings and to speak only if spoken to. So again, another intimidation tactic. This guy sounds, Sean Combs, pardon my French, like a total jackass, just a mean-spirited person. And he's talking down to an assistant saying, only speak if you're spoken to. David James testified that he once saw Sean Diddy Combs lick Cassie's face during a freak-off. So Again, he said she never confided in him, but he sees things, and this is one of those things. David James sees Sean Combs licking Cassie's face during a freak off. But what was even more disturbing, if possible, is that at that point he says she was unresponsive and describes her as being totally zoned out. That is the quote, that she is totally zoned out, giving more credence to the fact that that they were often very, very high on drugs. He says he gave 6 months notice and then he left Bad Boy and Sean Combs, which was a very smart move in 2009. However, he is then crossed, David James is, by Marc Agnifilio, or Agnifilio. I never know which way to pronounce it. And he is sort of the lead defense attorney at this trial. And this cross gets fairly aggressive. Now, if you'll recall, most of the witnesses, except for, I believe, David Phillip up to this point, have been women. So the cross was more gentle. Obviously, with Cassie Ventura, that was a big issue. Child of God here says everything this man has done to his employees, friends, and family to humiliate them is going to come back to him tenfold. I believe in that as well. Sean Combs led the most ridiculous life ever. I won't watch the movie. It's just too much. And speaking of movies, if you were following me on Instagram and Twitter last week, Twitter, it's at podcast STS. I guess it's X, at podcast STS. And Instagram, Surviving the Survivor, I was posting photos and videos. Sean Combs has a film crew there inside the van that comes to pick up the family. And by the way, it is notable that neither yesterday nor today, Sean Combs' children have not been there. Last week, I don't know why they didn't not come last week when they shouldn't have, because the testimony was horrendous, but they are not there this week. The twin daughters, actually, sadly, because they're victims in this too, they attended, from what I read, their prom last night. So they were out dancing at their prom last evening in matching red dresses. So that's just a little more color. Their dad is on trial for his life, and they're going to the prom, but they're not in court today. So this cross-examination by the defense of David James, at this point, David James becomes visibly sort of agitated and defensive. When asked by Marc Agnifilio if he left D-Rock at the diner during the Suge Knight incident, he snaps back and says, "That's a crazy question, because there's loyalty here." He's like, "I wouldn't leave this guy." And then added he was 100% sure he did not leave D-Rock behind, and noted that the event was 20 years ago. But to be honest, if this guy was like, "Yeah, I just left them and took off," I mean, I wouldn't, I wouldn't think less of him as a juror. The guy had every reason to take off and skedaddle out of there. David James admits that Sean Combs allegedly kept embarrassing footage, excuse me, of him, quote unquote, just in case. Again, in an effort to blackmail, bribe, choose your, your word there. But the same issue came up with Cassie Ventura and others, that Sean Combs would hold sort of compromising or embarrassing video in an effort to have leverage and blackmail people with said video. Now, David James himself testifies that he took an ecstasy pill. Unclear if it was an Obama ecstasy pill, but he takes an ecstasy pill on New Year's Eve, and he started doing what he describes, this is David James, as Diddy bopping. He was dancing out of character. If you look at David James, he does not appear to be the type that would be Diddy bopping, but nevertheless he is. And that's the encounter when Sean Combs comes to him and says, "I'm going to keep this footage in case I ever need it." That is a direct quote from David James, relaying what Sean Combs told him at that time. I'm going to keep this footage in case I ever need it. And he said that the video was obviously intentionally kept to embarrass and or control him. He now talks about an incident where a security guard named Bonds, and we heard about some of this security detail last week, but we hear about the security guard Bonds picking up two women and bringing them to Sean Combs's home. David James says he did not know that they were quote unquote prostitutes, but after having sex, one asks for $200. David James said that he was shocked. I'm not sure why, to be honest, because it seems like this was par for the course. But the security guard tells him to pay her. Quote unquote, security did it all the time. So this appears to be for the security guards themselves taking advantage, I guess, of these women in their own right. And then David James adds, I never talked to Mr. Combs about personal things. I never talked to Mr. Combs about personal things. David James confirms on the witness stand that he had spoken to a lawyer before revealing full details about the Suge Knight gun incident to prosecutors. The guy's scared. I mean, Suge Knight's a scary man. He's in prison with not a lot to lose. Not that I think he's going to take any action, but then what's Sean Combs' camp going to do? And now he's, finds himself in the middle of a hip hop / rap war that he doesn't want any part of. When asked why he did not share everything in his first meeting with the government, he said, I told the government what I needed to after seeking legal counsel. He acknowledges receiving a proffer agreement, which allows him to disclose potentially incriminating information in exchange for certain protections. What those protections are unclear. But again, at the center of this, one of the things is, was this a criminal enterprise? And when you hear that this guy literally had to go to an attorney, which I don't know how much that would do in terms of being retaliated against in a manner that maybe Sean Combs would. I don't know what an attorney would do, but he definitely was asking for protections from a legal standpoint, and I guess a law enforcement standpoint, and what those protections are remain a bit unclear. When asked what his role was that night, I think going back to the Suge Knight thing, I was there to drive the car. When asked why he went at all, why did you go at all this is now when they returned to Mel's drive-in with the guns, why did you go? I don't think I had an option, which sounds like a pretty reasonable and realistic answer at that time and place. David James does announce sort of without being asked this, but he says that he was prepped by prosecutors Tuesday morning. That would have meant early this morning, he was getting some last minute prep, and he was specifically prepped for Marc Agnifilio for his line of questioning. He is a very savvy attorney, so I guess they were kind of giving him a pep talk, saying, "Don't forget this, don't forget that." And Marc Agnifilio responds, "Fair enough," and he asks. He's a nice guy, Marc Agnifilio. I think, lawyering aside, which is his job, he just seems like, I said this last week, like the kind of dad you would meet at the barbecue with the goofy hat on. Like, he just seems like a sweet guy. But he is, make no mistake about it, he is a formidable criminal defense attorney that will do anything to win a case. And his wife is working the Luigi Mangione case on behalf of Luigi Mangione. So they're sort of a power legal couple, and there's a reason he's successful, and it's not because he's nice. But Marc Agnifilio did not expect that response that, I was being prepped this morning by prosecutors. So he says, fair enough. And then he asked David James, how did I do? And David James just responds, consistent. And there's laughter in the courtroom because it was just a back and forth that no one expected between defense attorney cross-examining a witness, and people had a little laugh at that. David James, he also gives more detail about how Sean Combs ran his companies. And he says, and I quote, he was involved with everything. David James says he once worked 21 days straight and asked, where did he get this? Not Sean Combs, that he himself, David James, worked 21 days straight. And when asked where he got this work ethic from, he said, I was raised in Flint, Michigan, Of course, that's a gritty city in Michigan. Obviously, the place that had the issues with their tap water. He grew up there, not the easiest neighborhood, and said, it's a blue collar neighborhood essentially, a car, an automaker city. And so he was there, grew up there, and that's where he got this crazy work ethic from, to be able to work 3 straight weeks. Another assistant, he said, once went to the hospital for dehydration after being asked to work for 24 straight hours. So not the most easy, carefree work environment. In fact, the exact opposite. David James says that Sean Combs' security detail used to have a saying, and it goes, and I quote here, "Do you know what rhymes with tired? Do you know what rhymes with tired? Fired. Fired rhymes with tired." And so the implication was there is no excuse for being tired. You keep working, and you work for Sean Combs, and you show your loyalty. The probably the most interesting and I don't know, intriguing and yet inconsequential thing of the day is that somehow during this cross-examination, David James explains that Sean Combs loved ketchup on everything, but that he insisted on applesauce on his cheeseburgers. You heard that correctly. That should be the thumbnail. Applesauce on cheeseburgers. If anyone has ever had applesauce on a cheeseburger, please let me know in the chat. You can email me, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. Not sure what's going on here. I'm not sure why he liked applesauce on his cheeseburgers. I've never heard of that. I never even contemplated that. And I'm a pretty weird guy, but cheeseburgers and applesauce. What a great thumbnail, COE. Maybe we switch the thumbnail to cheeseburgers and applesauce, because anyone who sees that is going to go, what the hell is this? He is then excused as a witness, and he walks out of there on a beautiful sunny day. I just want to point out that the 5 days I was there last week, it rained every single day. Rosa B says, serial killer trait, Mr. Man, just wrong, yuck, LOL, gross. That is strange. There you go. Pork chops and applesauce, but not yeah, I've heard of pork chops and applesauce, but not cheeseburgers and applesauce. The comments keep coming in. Not the worst thing that we've heard about him, though. That is for damn sure. I hate applesauce, says IGG Rocks, one of our OGs. Brooklyn Pasola, it's stopped now, Joel, I guess. I wonder if he's getting applesauce inside the Metropolitan Detention Center. On a serious note, before lunch, Regina Ventura, Cassie's mother, Cassandra Ventura's mother, they were seen walking in around 10:30. It's, I guess, roughly an hour later, where she is now taking the stand in Sean Combs' federal sex trafficking trial. She testified, and we saw these pictures. She actually took some of these pictures, but she testifies that she sees or saw bruises on her daughter Cassie's back and legs. Now, that is the father on the left, the mother in the middle. The gentleman in the blue must work for the courthouse or the government. I guess he works for the government, but he is security, and he's built like security, and he does not mess around. And he was one of the guys last week who was leading out Alex Fine, who is Cassie Ventura's husband. So there's another gentleman. They're equally scary, and they just make sure that the witnesses come in and leave safely and freely without being overly harassed. But of course, the media is allowed to take photos. It looks like Cassie Ventura's father has like a ponytail back there. She, of course, what do you call? I don't know what you call that. I was about to call it like a poncho, which it's not. But you get what I'm saying. Gray, and she's looking elegant. She testifies, Cassie Ventura's mother, that she again saw these bruises on Cassie's back and legs. We saw photographs, actual photographs that she documented these bruises by taking. This was back in December 2011. She says, my daughter didn't want to see the direct quote is, she didn't want me to see her like that. She didn't want me to see her like that. And then as I said, Regina took photos of the bruises. They were entered into evidence in this trial, and the jurors are going to get to go back and look at those during deliberations. Regina says, and I quote, "I was deeply concerned about my daughter's well-being." She said that she knew her daughter, Cassie, was in a toxic and dangerous relationship, though she admittedly said that Cassie did not share all the details at the time, and specifically recalls an occasion where Cassie Ventura says to her, and I quote, "She told me she was scared of what he might do. She told me she was scared of what he might do." Imagine being the mom here. You're in sort of a helpless situation. You're obviously looking out for the best interest of your daughter, and your daughter's with this famous celebrity, and he is a freak in his own right. And now, you're basically isolated in some regards from your daughter in terms of being able to help her. She confirms on the stand receiving what is now this infamous December 23, 2011 email from Cassie. And it reads as following. The email says, "The threats that Sean Combs," she doesn't use his name, so it's in parentheses here, but the threats that he has made of me are that he will release 2 sexually explicit videos, one on Christmas Day and one other, meaning one other day. So he is now threatening, and he's threatening Cassie, and Cassie's emailing the mother that he's going to release these sexually explicit videos on Christmas Day. What a sweet boyfriend on Christmas Day. What a gift that would have been. Regina, the mother, tells jurors that she was absolutely terrified after receiving that email. She urges Cassie to leave the relationship, though she does acknowledge at this point that she believed her daughter was emotionally just stuck, logjam, could not get out of that relationship. She describes Cassie at that point as being withdrawn, anxious, afraid, scared. She said Cassie had become increasingly isolated from her family and friends over the course of her relationship with Sean Combs, kind of putting herself on a self-imposed exile. You see here, she also testified that Sean Combs threatened to release those tapes of Cassie unless she paid Sean Combs $20,000. I'm sure he really needed the money. He wanted to recoup money that he had spent on Cassie. And at that point, Regina explains on the stand that were forced to take out a home equity loan to pay back Sean Combs $20,000. The money was returned to their accounts days later. But I mean, it is not easy either to just go get a home equity loan. So they had to go through the whole bank process. And imagine, what you're getting it for. The bank has no idea. Imagine if the bank knew this is to pay off Sean Combs. I mean, what an absolute nightmare. And what a nightmare now, not only reliving all this, but you've got, you're making everything public. Everyone knows your business. Peaches here says, Betty Johnson, I'll go to Peaches. "Hello, my daughter Beth Warren got me hooked while I visited." Oh, thank you. In Houston, now I'm back in Tallahassee. Oh, thank you, Betty. I appreciate that. And maybe we'll do a meetup there. Peaches in Tallahassee for Donna Adelson's trial. "As a mother," from Peaches 81, "I can't imagine the amount of emotions this woman was experiencing on the stand, knowing what all that monster has done to her child. I'm a father, not a mother, but I would want to dive over that barrier with the gallery and have a word or two with him." How many people did he extort? It's probably an endless list. And I think things are getting a lot worse for him. I think the first couple of days, people are like, does this fit the charges? It is extortion. And then you see Gene Wall here. If you can put that back up, it says SDNY has thrown what does it say? SDNY has thrown this from RICO, but Combs is and sex trafficking, but Combs is textbook. So there you go. Again, Cassie's mom takes out this $20,000 home equity loan. She says that's the only way we could get the money, and explains that Combs was angry. He had spent money on her, and she had been with another person. She also goes on to say that Sean Combs's bookkeeper emailed me the wire information, and then I proceeded to go to the bank and wire the money to the account. Regina says the money did, as I just stated, and you see on the graphic, come back into the account 4 to 5 days later. This guy obviously has got some incredibly deep issues. Regina Ventura continues with additional testimony. She testifies that she once called police on Sean Combs after he took Cassie's phone. This is a story we heard from Cassie last week. They were driving in Los Angeles. He thought she was cheating on her. He hit her and beats her and grabs her phone and then disappears, quote unquote, down Wilshire Boulevard. It was a bitter argument. Cassie eventually ends up at her mother's place in California and says, hey, he took my phone, and she proceeds to call police. But then at that point, Cassie Ventura, who's afraid, obviously, of Sean Combs, says, I'm not going to out him when police show up, and does not give them a name. There's not much they can do. And later that day, the phone mysteriously shows back up at Cassie Ventura's mother's home, and it is reunited with Cassie. At one point, Regina said, and I quote, I was trying to hit him, but I was unsuccessful. Kudos to her, I guess, for fighting back for her daughter. That, of course, is a mother's instinct, and it kicked in at that moment. Again, she says, yeah, we are, I was going to try to take a swipe at him, but could not get to him, I guess. Again, Sean Combs eventually returns the phone. But then, I didn't know this part, she reveals that he gives the phone back, but then he takes Cassie's car as he is leaving. The defense, in sort of a surprise and interesting move, they decline to cross-examine Regina Ventura, simply saying, I do not have any questions for you, and she is excused and likely on her way back home. So all this testimony about the abuse, the sex tape, the threats, the alleged extortion, none of it is contested by the defense there. Be interesting. We're going to do a show on this at 7 tonight. We'll ask lawyers, and we will have a psychologist on again to find out why Sean Combs likes applesauce on his cheeseburger. Next up on the witness stand, and this takes us through lunch, just a little bit more testimony-wise. Guy named Sheree Hayes takes a stand. He is another escort, and he goes by a rather interesting name, The Punisher. The Punisher. What a name for a male escort. He is 51 years old now. Our first escort who took the stand, Daniel Phillip, he was 41. So this guy is 10 years old. He testifies now about a 2012 encounter inside a Trump hotel suite. And you'll recall, this is where David James, the assistant, said that Sean Combs insisted on staying at the Trump Tower hotel. He was hired, he says, to perform for Sean Diddy Combs and Cassie. He says that Cassie opened the door, and I quote here, she's wearing a bathrobe and nothing on underneath, and she had a wig. And we hear this from Danny Phillip last week, that when he first encountered them, that's Daniel Phillip, that same thing. She was in a red wig and high stripper-like heels. I think she even described them that way. And Sean Combs was wearing a bandana from the eyes down, so he couldn't really tell who it was. He asked that person at one point, what do you do? He said, I'm in the import-export business. And then he said once he heard the voice, he's a hip-hop fan, he realized that it was Sean Combs. So she answers the door, according to the Punisher, wearing a bathrobe and nothing on underneath. And then, according to him, she hands him a quote-unquote sack of money. He looks inside at one point, sees that there's $800 inside. And Cassie says to him, and I quote, this is him, the Punisher, telling the court and jurors what Cassie says. And she says, create a sexy scene of me and her applying baby oil on each other and create a sexy environment that her husband would come up on. And then instructs him, do not acknowledge her husband, try not to look at him, and no communication. So he's given these really specific instructions. And then court started late today because of subway issues for some of the jurors. So testimony did not begin until till 9:45, and then ends about 3 hours later, just short of 3 hours, at 12:35 p.m. Eastern time. So shortly they'll be back in for lunch if they're not already back in after lunch. Again, 6 of 7 of Sean Diddy Combs' kids showed up to court last week. None of them in court this time around. And Sean Diddy Combs, just to put a bow on it, is facing these multiple counts of racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transporting for prostitution. That indictment was unsealed after his arrest just this past September. So that is day 7 of testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. We're going to be doing another wrap-up show tonight. We're going to catch up with Brian Koberger later in the week. Inmates are still on the run in New Orleans. We've got 2 missing kids in Canada. A lot going on in the world of true crime. Jermaine says, go Cassie's mom. Ned Smith ready for a shower. And what was this last question here? If you have any questions, you can bring them to me right now. We'll take a few if I'm able to answer them. Mama Ventura is a badass for testifying. Diddy apparently is out of his oatmeal and into another color, which I can't quite recall. But all last week he was in oatmeal. I'll double check that because I know people do want to know what people are wearing inside the courtroom, particularly. And look at this. This is a great comment here, Jermaine, because I called it a poncho. I don't know what else to call it, but Jermaine she's saying it's her cape, and I agree. So there you go. Wash the Diddiness off. I'll tell you, whenever I'm in New York, I shower multiple times a day. I actually shower multiple times a day anyway, especially in Miami where it is 1,000 degrees today. But in New York, and especially after Sean Diddy Combs' witness testimony. Thank you to Child of God. Greatly appreciate your show. You came recommended. Thank you. The best. I love that. The best thing anyone can do besides liking, subscribing, the absolute best thing you can do is please share the show with a friend. Is Gene Deal testifying? Good question. So I heard yes, and then I heard no. I will try to get an answer. He's a former security / body man for Sean Combs, who is literally quoted as saying that Sean Diddy, in so many words, is a demon and has a demon living inside of him, which, after hearing all this testimony, does not really surprise me. Comes as no shock. So a lot of people are asking, even people who've been here a long time. Space Coast is our tech wizard on the West Coast. Meave Moe and Steve Cohen is our booking producer extraordinaire. Why we have the best shows in the evening with roundtable panels, and the COE. It stands for the Chief of Everything. She is the wife, my wife, also a former network news correspondent. She is the glue that holds us together. And then you've got the mods modding inside the chat. He was just pimping Cassie out. He's disgusting POS. I would have to agree with you. I'll say this, the first week when I was up there, and I'm obviously not, I'm back in Miami now. I'm not in New York City. But when I was up there, there was a lot of, I guess, concern by some, because there are also, believe it or not, plenty of Sean Combs fans, both outside the courthouse and inside the overflow rooms. But there was a lot of concern. Is there enough here to get this guy? Because you're hearing racketeering and you're hearing sex trafficking. Well, as the days pass and we get this sort of mountain of evidence against him, just yesterday we had a federal prosecutor on who believes that there's already enough, I believe, under the sex trafficking charge. So it's going to be, in my opinion, especially with the Southern District of New York prosecuting, that he's going to walk completely free. He might not be charged or found guilty of all the charges, but I would be stunned if he completely walks. But with that said, with that caveat, you never, ever, ever know what a jury is thinking. And you'll hear lawyers, criminal defense, and prosecutors say there is no such thing as a slam dunk. And I would say that there's no truer statement than that as regards to any case, but particularly one where you've got a world famous hip hop star at the center of it. This testimony is really disturbing. It sure is. Look at that name, Ileana Hernandez, that is the COE's real first name, Ileana. You guys share names. In sketches, it looks like Diddy isn't in restraints. Yeah, I don't think he is in restraints. Wonder if that's normal or he's getting special treatment. As far as I know, he is not in restraints. I'll try to find out about that as well. I don't even think I asked about that when I was there in person. It looks like at least his hands for sure are roaming free. So, COE, where are we at here? I don't know if there are some questions that I missed. And thank you, Darla. I appreciate that. The Fed success rate in 2022 went up from 98% to 99%. And they say, well, you've got deep pockets, at least in the state system, but if you're in the federal judicial system, they have endless amounts of resources. I mean, literally endless. And I don't care if you're a billionaire, they're still going to outwork and outdo you. Jenny, I can't even try to pronounce his name. He tortures everyone in his orbit his whole life. He's been like this. It just escalated as he gained more money and power. He thinks he's the only person on the earth and no one else matters. Yeah, I don't know. What was my Freudian slip, Ned? What did I say? Someone let me know what I said. COE, what did I say? That was a Freudian slip.
I'm not sure, but I just want to remind everyone, if you missed our show last night, we had several attorneys on who were very interesting and who were able to discuss the fact that they don't have to prove several charges for Diddy to be found guilty. I know that there's been a lot of question about whether or not the state is actually presenting enough evidence to prove the charges that Diddy is facing. So if you want to touch on that quickly, Joel.
Yeah, so the charges again are multiple counts of racketeering conspiracy. And that's the one that I have the hardest time because it's like a catch-all charge. And it was basically implemented to catch mobsters in New York City, the John Gottis of the world. And that's how they got them. It also allows for wiretapping and all sorts of things. The other one is sex trafficking, but it's specifically by force, fraud, or coercion. And when I first saw that, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, I didn't really pay attention to the or. So I thought you needed to show all three, force, fraud, and coercion. But that's why it's an or. You only need one. And so far, prosecutors say that the force is there, the coercion is there, and likely the fraud is there. So one, if not all three, have already, according to them, been proven. And so that's likely at this point what's going to tie him up. But I think they'll get him on racketeering too. And then you've got transporting for prostitution, which if you've already heard the testimony of Daniel Phillip and others, they talk about how they were flown from the Hamptons to Vegas, Vegas to Cannes, Vegas to Los Angeles, all these different routes that these the Punisher and this other escort so far we're talking about. They were not just in one place. They were flown across state lines. And if you do that, that is a federal crime. And I think that obviously this particular charge, I think only carries about 10 years. But it seems like that's a given that they're going to convict on that. But again, you just never know what jurors are thinking. Worst case scenario, maybe best case for the public at large, is that he's convicted on all the charges and then he is never going to see the light of day again, and he'll be running his criminal enterprise from behind bars at a federal prison. By the way, some people think, well, federal prison is a camp. I've heard that comment a lot. Well, he's going to go to a camp after this. Here he's paying for people to show up. There are people wearing free Diddy shirts out there. I may or may not have ordered a shirt that says hashtag itty bitty Diddy. If I did, maybe I'll wear it one day. But it's still unclear whether or not that actually happened. But that's what others were calling him. Suge Knight famously saying that he is known for having a Tootsie Roll sized male member, and that is potentially. I actually asked that question last night. It was awkward for sure. That maybe that's at the root of all his problems. And then so I didn't know there's a song, a Tootsie Roll song. I don't know who wrote it, but there's an actual song that is titled Tootsie Roll. So there you go. Tootsie Roll would be a great Ned Smith. It would be a great rapper name. I would maybe become a rapper just to have the title Tootsie Roll. Tootsie Roll Joel. Tootsie Roll Joel. All right. I've clearly run out of things to say here. You got the day 7 testimony, all the morning stuff. We'll be back here at 7 o'clock Eastern to wrap up the full day's events. Right now, I'm going to reach out to the print reporters who I'm in touch with in court to see if they're going to come on as guests, and they include reporters for Newsweek magazine, which you may have heard of, the USA Today, which you may have heard of, and other New York papers. So the reporters are a pretty tight bunch, especially with this case where everyone is just disgusted by the testimony. So we will get you some of those reporters on some future Diddy shows. And again, the federal prosecutor yesterday, who we had on, said there's no way this is going 8 weeks. It's likely another couple of weeks, which is good to know, because I don't know which is more painful at this point, listening to this or watching and listening to Karen Reed. But let's move on from both. So with that said, I'll see you 7 o'clock tonight. Love you, America. Love you, New York City. Love you, Lower Manhattan. Thinking about Cassie Ventura's mother today. She obviously has not had an easy day, and good for her for being a great mom. We will see you at 7 o'clock Eastern with a full wrap up on the Sean Diddy Combs trial.